Good evening. One store owner describes East Palestine as that small town where everyone knows your name. That's why the news that 49-year-old pastor Rodney McManus being arrested on sex charges came as a shock to so many. The 14-month-old was flown to Akron Children's Hospital's main campus in Akron, and the detective tells me she's in the ICU and doing well tonight. Now, once she's released, detectives plan to subpoena her blood work. They also want to test drug residue that was found in the family's home to find out if that's from marijuana or some other type of drug. But the million-dollar question tonight is how this little girl would have come into contact with a dangerous drug that would have caused her to overdose. Derek and Leslie, police tell me it was items like high-grade tires, expensive toolboxes, and even motorcycles that were taken from businesses in at least 3 communities. And tonight, they have suspects in mind. They even have plenty of evidence. And as far as the investigation, well, they tell me it's far from over. While police say heroics are not the best way to handle a situation like this, Vicky says the suspect was a short, white, thin male who looked like he was in his 30s, but was kind of hunched over, and she thought she could take him. Well, Derek, we're here near Public Square, where on Monday, things were pretty calm in Cleveland, but today, controlled chaos. Protests kicked into high gear, and an overwhelming presence of police needed to move in to keep the peace, and our cameras were right in the middle of it. If you don't think the growing heroin problem affects you, you're wrong. Local police say the addicts are getting younger, and the majority of home invasions, robberies, and thefts are the result of addicts stealing to feed their addiction.
As 21 News continues to look for solutions to the opioid epidemic, we're exploring how to empower the community. What can be done to take back our neighborhoods?
Michelle Nick says one man has dodged bullets to fight the bad guys, and some tips in the past have helped the fight, but now they're calling on others to do the same. We want to warn you, some video may be disturbing.
Frank Elling of the Idora area has been shot at twice and been jumped by a group of teens, but it hasn't scared off this neighborhood warrior.
I don't take threats well.
Instead, Elling fought back, arming himself with a camera. Ever since, he's been determined to stop the opioid and heroin drug deals, overdoses, and break-ins by using his watchful eye to spook the bad guys who sometimes can allegedly be spotted in this drugstore parking lot.
This is where the buyers of all types of drugs and prostitution want to come.
One day, through his camera lens, the opioid epidemic really came into focus and was as real as it gets. A woman lies overdosing on the pavement, an empty pill bottle nearby. And Elling says, sadly, this wasn't the first time.
One guy goes in the store, he comes back out, they had shot up, and both of them are sitting in the car, just, you can see it. I mean, they're zoned out.
These images are what Elling wants to delete from his hard drive and the community's image. Now he's calling on local churches to team up by forming 24/7 community patrols.
It takes not a police state, but a citizen state. Churches need to put people to work until it's done.
Jeff Solik, the commander of the Mahoning Valley Drug Task Force, agrees, saying no one knows a neighborhood better than those who live in it. But understand, cleaning up the streets won't happen overnight.
Society in general, they like immediate results, and we can't do these large, complex investigations like you just saw in Columbiana County. They have over 100 defendants. That was a great investigation, but I'm sure that wasn't done in 48 minutes like you see on TV.
And community tips have led to the prosecutions of the criminal gangs, the Vic Boys, H Block and E Block, and dozens of drug, gun, and burglary prosecutions, including the arrest and conviction of one of the area's top heroin dealers, DeWaylen Colvin, who was linked to 4 murders. With more local news, I'm Michelle Nix. Good evening. The halls of justice here in Mahoning County were roped off as a crime scene this morning after Robert Seaman jumped to his death. This just 1 week before his trial was set to begin. And I want to warn you that the video you're about to see may be disturbing. This video captures the final seconds of defendant Robert Seaman's life. He leaves Judge Maureen Sweeney's courtroom after a status conference. At the order of the court, he's dressed in civilian clothing, no handcuffs, only a leg restraint, and escorted by 2 deputies. But in a split second, he makes his move, jumps over the 4th floor balcony, falling to his death. A witness says you could hear one of the deputies yell, "Don't." Joe Gorman, a reporter with our print partner, The Vindicator, witnessed the commotion, saying people were screaming and crying.
And I heard somebody shout. I looked across from me and I saw a deputy at the railing on the 4th floor, and I saw a big white object falling through the air. And then I screamed because it was freaky.
Siemens attorney Tom Zena rushed to the 1st floor rotunda to see if there were any signs of life.
I got down there right after and I tried to take a pulse, and there was a little faint one, but then it faded out.
Seaman, who was facing the death penalty if convicted of killing 10-year-old Corinne Gump and her grandparents in a house fire 2 years ago, was also expected to be transported to Portage County today, where his trial would begin next week. But his attorney says he was not suicidal.
Never, no. He worked on his case with us. He was very responsive.
Prosecutor Don Cantalamessa feels Seaman's final act speaks for itself.
I think it's very telling. He knew the evidence against him.
With more local news, I'm Michelle Nix.
It's a story 21 News reported exclusively, and tonight new developments as the man accused of brutally beating a disabled man is arrested again, and this time in a courtroom.
Michelle Nix has new developments in the case against a hired caregiver caught on tape allegedly doing anything but delivering the care he was hired to give.
Devanzo Tate Sr. is taken into police custody from Judge Elizabeth Cobley's courtroom as he's arrested on a new felony assault charge. One of his 2 previous misdemeanor assault charges will be dismissed and enhanced to the felony level after his alleged crime was caught on tape.
Beat your to death. You hear me? You hear me?
Tate Sr., who worked for Synergy in Richmond at the time, was supposed to provide basic care for individuals with disabilities. Instead, he is accused of slamming a chair over a patient's head and threatening to kill him. The assault charge against him was enhanced because the victim in this case was functionally impaired, according to prosecutors.
Defendant, while in the care of him, did assault him.
Tate Sr. was arraigned by video from the Mahoning County Jail on the new charge, saying he has hired his own attorney. He has since been terminated from his job as a caretaker from Synergy in Richmond after several videos surfaced of him allegedly beating the same patient.
Now what you gonna do? Huh? Now what you gonna do?
Tate Sr. is also a former Mahoning County Sheriff's deputy, and he's also charged with aggravated menacing and another charge of assault, this time against a 13-year-old Youngstown school student, who police say he charged, grabbed with both hands around his neck and threw to the ground during an after-school program. He is no longer involved in that program. With more local news, I'm Michelle Nix.
We need you to back up.
They find her.
2-year-old Rain Peterson goes missing for 2 days. Law enforcement searches using canines, helicopters, and even horseback. A shot fired on Duck Creek Road leads to a call out of the SWAT team and hours of attempted negotiations with a man the sheriff believes is barricaded inside of his home. Just 2 examples of where a drone could have changed the course of the negotiations and could have saved countless man-hours.
Recently we had a situation where we weren't sure whether the subject was barricaded or not, and this would have been an ideal situation for us to use a drone to get a better look inside the house where we weren't quite sure what the situation was.
The Mahoning County Sheriff's Department now has a special drone unit in place, the first in the area, a new tool in their arsenal that could be the future of crime fighting. The FAA training and certification for 5 members of the Mahoning County Sheriff's Department cost about $3,000. But the sheriff says it's worth every penny if it helps locate one missing child or a loved one. The unmanned aerial vehicle that looks like a toy and is operated by remote control is able to get to places where it would be too costly or dangerous for humans to go. And it's already been deployed to help search for a missing suspect from a chase in Jackson Township. But the sheriff hopes to do so much more in the Tri-County area.
Number one, because I really think it'll help everybody, especially when it comes to missing children, barricaded suspects, search and rescue, hazardous materials.
We can deploy very rapidly once we get that phone call. We're in the car and we can be set up in less than 5 minutes.
So it seems when it comes to crime fighting, the possibilities are endless. What's really impressive? The drone is equipped with an infrared or thermal camera for night vision, so it can be used 24 hours a day to search and do surveillance. It also has active track. Just touch the screen when you spot a suspect or a vehicle, and it will automatically follow them wherever they go. With more local news, I'm Michelle Nix. This is a story of love, loss, and hope, delivered in a most unusual way. 6 years overdue.
I just had it in my hand and started to cry.
A sign that just maybe there is life after death and a true love that endures. Always.
I just feel like it was his way of saying, I'm still here and I'm watching over you.
Kathy and Jim Crunk shared a passion for old music and old movies. They married at the Mill Creek Park Rose Garden, surrounded by family and friends. A 5-year union filled with love.
You didn't find one without the other.
A courtship and kinship that seemed to define love.
I just feel very fortunate to have had that kind of relationship that most people don't even get near in their lifetime.
But for Kathy and Jim, what they shared ended far too soon. Jim died from complications in 2007, about a year after undergoing gastric bypass surgery. However, before his death, from his hospital bed, Jim occupied his time writing letters, filling out self-addressed stamped envelopes, seeking autographs from his favorite baseball players, to fulfill a love only second to his wife.
Jim was passionate about his hobbies, and prior to my meeting him, he had always collected baseball cards. Pete Rose, he's got 2 of them, Mickey Mantle. Yogi Berra.
Autographed baseball cards that continued to find their way home, even after Jim's death. But it's one that arrived most recently, 6 years after he mailed it, that caught his widow off guard. Her husband's handwriting, something he touched.
It really threw me for a loop. I mean, I cried. It just, over 6 years later, to see these cards come back.
It turns out All-Star MVP outfielder Dale Murphy gave this Liberty woman a gift without ever realizing it.
He was like he'd come back home again.
Interestingly, for the couple who met online, it was the written word that was a symbol of love that stood the test of time. Like a message in a bottle, a letter from a lost love has found its way home. For Kathy, it was like Jim was playing their song.
It's not for just an hour, not for just a day, not but for just a year, but always.
With more local news, I'm Michelle Nix.
Michelle Nix was right alongside weather investigators today. Michelle, what did they find?
Derek and Leslie, we have learned a lot from meteorologists with the National Weather Service in the last several hours. They are telling me that it was an EF1 tornado that touched down here in Fowler last night. Now, an EF1 tornado is actually fairly weak. The wind speeds between 73 and 110 miles per hour. They're saying that the starting point was in the center of town on Route 193. Lisa Starcher of Fowler recorded this cell phone video of Thursday night's tornado, and she sounds scared to death for her family.
Fred, it's coming right towards us! Come on, it's coming towards us!
The morning after, Bud Morgan of Fowler is thankful the lights are back on, and he's ready for the cleanup after a storm like he's never seen before.
I knew, that we was going to get some storms, but I didn't know about a tornado. Yeah. Right till the last minute, and then it was too late.
3 meteorologists from the National Weather Service traveled to Trumbull County to survey the damage.
Yeah, this looks like the center right through here.
Due south, dead south right now.
They had help from witness Brett Starcher of Fowler, videos that were recorded by witnesses, and uprooted trees that tell a story of their own.
We're kind of right in the middle of the tornado damage here, and it looks like you know, the thing that's really obvious to us is we see the trees that have been uprooted and snapped. They're all kind of converging into a single point, and that's classic signature of tornado damage.
The National Weather Service also surveyed more of the area along Route 7 in Hartford Township to determine if there was more than one event or more than one tornado. Some Trumbull County communities wanted to sound their tornado sirens when the skies literally turned threatening last night, but they hesitated to do so because the National Weather Service hadn't issued a warning yet. The tornado warning was issued at 7:05 p.m. and the tornado was spotted at 7:18.
So there are occasions where, you know, people may be seeing a tornado, and until we know about that, then we might not have all the criteria or all the data necessary to make that determination.
So if you feel in danger, warning or not, shelter in place. With more local news, I'm Michelle Nix.